Layla will be raised by your sister and me. You need to leave, my husband said coldly. I was shocked and speechless at his sudden declaration of divorce. It was too much that he suddenly invited my sister-in-law Stella into our home and now wants to drive me out. His merciless declaration plunged me into despair. I'm Grace, 33 years old. I live with my husband and our daughter. Our daughter Layla is in the 2nd grade, a thoughtful and sweet 8-year-old who's mature for her age and very family-oriented. My husband is an average office worker, and to put it kindly, his salary isn't great. Thinking about Layla's education and our future retirement fills me with anxiety. After crunching the numbers on future expenses, I concluded that relying solely on my husband's income would be tough. So, when Layla started elementary school, I decided to start working part-time. I got a job at a nearby supermarket, just a 5-minute walk from home, which made it a very convenient workplace. Life was busy with parenting, chores, and work, but it was fulfilling in its own way. Dad, you left your shirt on the floor and put your bag in the room, please. Layla, arms crossed, spoke to her father relaxing on the sofa after returning from work. Kids mimic their parents, don't they? Maybe she's imitating me. She must be at that age where she wants to act grown up. Watching Layla like this brings a smile to my face. Sorry, I'll clean it up right away. My husband playfully complied with our daughter's instructions. Really, you're not a child anymore. Get it together. Layla puffed her cheeks saying this. It's hard to tell who the child is here. While preparing dinner, I said this to my husband and Layla, laughing. Layla, still playing mom, kept her arms crossed. Dad is so sloppy. I have to be the responsible one, she sighed, and gestured in exasperation after saying this. Layla's criticism continued. And you need to do something about that belly. It's embarrassing for me. How can I face my friends with a parent who's a member of the Potbelly Aliens? Hearing this, my husband could only chuckle while rubbing his protruding stomach. I'm not the one to talk, but over the past few years, he's gained more than 10 kilo. In his youth, his slender figure and gentle demeanor attracted many women, and I was one of them. But now, my husband bears little resemblance to his younger self. He's just become a chubby, middle-aged man. After 10 years together, it doesn't bother me much, but I can see why our daughter, at her age, might find it embarrassing. Layla would just nod along and laugh at her little criticisms. Then one day during dinner, my husband's phone rang. Answering the phone at dinner is bad manners, Layla chided him like a mother. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, he apologized. However, his expression instantly brightened when he saw the caller ID. It's from my sister. Sorry, I need to take this. He stood up and brought the phone to his ear. Hey sis, long time no see. How have you been? He seemed happy to talk to her, his eyes shining. The last time I saw Stella was 2 years ago. We visited my husband's family when Layla graduated from kindergarten, and Stella and her husband happened to be there too. We've been married for over 10 years, but I've only met Stella a few times. While my interactions with Stella were rare, my husband kept in regular contact. He's the eldest son, and Stella is the eldest daughter. My husband always adored his sister since they were kids, following her around as his parents once told me. I've always thought it's great that the siblings are close, so it never bothered me. Their phone conversation seemed lively and lasted about 15 minutes. Finally, he ended the call. Returning to his seat, he spoke with a happy expression. My sister is getting a divorce and moving here, he said cheerfully. Is that something to smile about? I wondered, but he continued without noticing my confusion. She's moving here to Boston. Hearing this, I was puzzled. Stella lives in Anchorage while we're in Boston. If she were moving to Seattle, where our parents live, I'd understand. But why Boston? So, she'll be staying with us for a while. I hope that's okay, he said. Staying here isn't living with us? I asked, seeking clarification. Of course, she can't find a place right away, and she's going through a tough time. Layla likes her aunt, right? He turned to Layla. I love Aunt Stella. Layla beamed. Given the circumstances, I couldn't object. The decision was made, and Stella was set to stay with us. A week later, I returned from my part-time job to the sound of laughter inside. Layla, you're doing great. Stella was patting Layla's head in the living room. Stella, long time no see, I greeted her. Grace, finally home, huh? You're late. Despite the long time apart, Stella treated me coldly. I was busy and couldn't leave work early, I replied, slightly annoyed after her reprimand. Layla's hungry, so hurry up with dinner, she demanded. Such audacity for someone staying as a guest. I was frustrated but had to start prepping dinner since I was late. Since that day, Stella's stay at our house began. She talked about her divorce, but her reasons seemed forced and unclear. She listed complaints about her husband not doing household chores and being cold, but it felt like she was stretching the truth. My husband didn't seem concerned and was just happy to live with his sister, not mentioning anything about her future plans. 2 weeks passed since Stella arrived, but she showed no interest in finding a new place or job. She mostly lounged around the house. I ended up preparing meals in between work. The only thing she actively did was take care of Layla, which kept me from complaining. When Layla wasn't home, Stella just watched TV or played on her phone. My frustration grew as this lifestyle continued. One night, after Stella and Layla had gone to bed, I confronted my husband. How long do you plan to let Stella stay? Wasn't she supposed to look for her own place? He responded, Why not just let her live here? Layla's fond of her, and it's helpful, isn't it? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There's a limit even for one's own sister. I couldn't fathom letting Stella, who neither worked nor did housework, stay indefinitely. It's not helpful at all. It's just stressful. Talk to Stella about moving out, please, I insisted firmly, but my husband looked angry. How can you say something so awful? She's just gone through a divorce and is hurt. I never thought you'd be that kind of person, he retorted. I felt desperate. My husband defended Stella, ignoring my struggles. I felt anger and sadness. Stella seemed unbothered by her behavior, just taking advantage of our silence and laziness. I felt so frustrated I couldn't argue back. Anyway, Stella will stay here for a while, he declared and went to the bedroom. I realized then how attached my husband was to his sister. Could I change the situation? If this continued, the stress might overwhelm me. I got scared thinking about this, but I couldn't think of a solution. I lay in bed, frightened by these thoughts, unable to sleep. A few days later, when I returned from work, my husband and Stella were sitting laughing. Without much thought, I began preparing dinner. Grace, can we talk? My husband called me. I stopped cooking and went to them. Stella sat silently, smirking as I took a seat. My husband said, I found a new house. Suddenly and without context, a new house? I was momentarily stunned, then realized he meant a new place for Stella. I thought my husband was also thinking about Stella's future. Found a new place? That's great, I said to Stella, but she just kept smirking. Confused, I listened as my husband continued, So pack your things soon. I couldn't comprehend and asked, My things? You mean Stella's, right? I asked, shaken. He replied emotionlessly, No mistake. I mean exactly what I said. I'm divorcing you and Layla will be raised by my sister and me. You need to leave. The shock left me speechless. Then Stella said to me, Sorry, I feel bad about this, but it's best for my brother and Layla. I'll take your place, so don't worry and just leave. She said it with a nasty smirk. Turning away from Stella, I faced my husband. What do you mean you want to kick me out and live with Stella? And you say it's for Layla's sake? I was too confused to say anything more. It's just as my sister said. Layla is more attached to her than to you. She'll be happier raised by my sister, my husband said coldly. I couldn't believe my husband thought this way. We had spent over a decade together as a family raising our child. I had worked hard for my husband and daughter without complaining about his meager salary. Feeling like I'd been plunged into the depths of despair, I was consumed by grief. But Stella, indifferent to my sorrow, turned to Layla. Layla, you want to live with me, right? Layla, who had been watching TV and not joining our conversation, looked up. Why? She asked, genuinely puzzled. You like me, don't you? Stella seemed rattled by Layla's unexpected response. Well, I like you, but living together all the time? I don't think I can, Layla said casually, catching Stella off guard. What? Stella sounded surprised and confused. Because right, you just laze around the house all day, make a mess with snacks on the sofa and never clean. It's Mom who cleans every day. Mom cooks for us, and you never say thank you. Stella was speechless at Layla's innocent yet truthful words. Consistency is important in everything we do. If we're lazy now, we won't be able to do things in the future, my teacher says. Without Mom, we won't have delicious meals, and the house will get dirty, right? I don't want to live with a lazy person, Layla continued unabashed. A lazy person? Stella, taken aback by such frank criticism, sounded foolish. My husband, seeing Stella's confusion, tried to intervene. Layla, you love Dad, right? You want to live with me? He asked, clearly unsettled. I guess I don't like living with a chubby alien and a lazy alien, she said with an innocent expression. Besides, I love Mom the most, so I want to live with her. Hearing Layla's words, I felt a warmth in my heart. Layla, known for her intelligence and kindness at school and among parents, saw right through Stella's indulgence and my husband's irrationality. She cleverly cornered Stella and my husband. I was both moved and exhilarated. They looked at each other, panicking. Layla's strategy wasn't over yet. Grandpa agrees with me, right? Suddenly, Layla said this while looking at the computer. What? My husband exclaimed in surprise. Stella and I were equally stunned by this unexpected turn. Yes, I think that's best for Layla, a voice came from the computer. I noticed that Layla had been fiddling with the computer earlier. Layla had been connected to father-in-law Noah via video call. The whole conversation was heard by Noah. Realizing this, my husband and Stella started panicking more. Dad! My husband stood up. What are you two thinking? Noah's voice, filled with evident anger, was like bubbling magma. Stella and my husband seemed to feel the heat of his fury. Dad, it's not like that, I mean, Stella stammered, unable to continue. Noah spoke again. So you ran away after dumping your debts on someone else? Stella, accused, fell silent awkwardly. Dad, what are you talking about? The word debts surprised my husband as well. Noah explained the situation. After her marriage, Stella had quit her job and become a housewife, but she hardly did any household work and spent her time out having fun. She started splurging on luxury brands and soon ran out of her allowance. Desperate for money to fund her lifestyle, she resorted to borrowing. Stella's husband was too busy with work to notice her misdemeanors. When the debts made life difficult, Stella fabricated reasons for a divorce, dumped the debts on her husband, and came to our house. She had fled, playing the victim. She even intended to have the divorce court fees paid for her. Stella's husband contacted Noah, revealing everything. My husband was unaware of these facts. My sister, what's this about a debt? That's nothing like what you told me. I helped you thinking you were pitiable and needed money for the divorce court. What are we going to do now? My husband turned on Stella despite his prior help. I was astounded by their irresponsibility. Enough of this. Noah's anger erupted at their selfishness. I'm coming there. Be ready, he declared. And the call ended. My husband and Stella looked pale with fear. What do we do now? Dad's coming and probably my husband too. Stella sought help from my husband. There's nothing I can do. Dad's going to kill me. They were tearful and panicked at Noah's announcement. Hey, Grace, help us too. To my surprise, my husband asked for my help. I had no love left for him. How pathetic to seek help from someone you tried to discard. Enjoy living with your beloved sister, the lazy person, and the pot-bellied man. I looked down on them, triumphant. Suddenly, when I looked at Layla, I saw that she was smiling innocently. Even in the middle of a terrible scene, Layla, my little hero who had defeated the monsters tormenting me, smiled innocently amidst the chaos. Fearing Noah's arrival, my husband and Stella soon fled, but they were caught by Noah and Stella's husband a few days later and severely reprimanded. As my husband initially wished, we divorced. He continually apologized and begged to cancel the divorce, but I firmly refused. My ex-husband, now living a lonely life, and Stella, also divorced, didn't receive the divorce court fees and had to return home, working tirelessly to repay her debts. After the divorce, I started working full-time at a design company run by an acquaintance. I had worked at a design company before marriage, and my former boss, now independent, hired me. Returning to office work was enjoyable, and with friendly colleagues, I was making the most of each day. As a single mother, I didn't struggle financially thanks to the child support from my ex-husband. Layla, already mature now, helped me more with the chores like cooking and laundry as she entered higher grades in elementary school. Intelligent and kind, she's become a leader in her class and is straightforward, which seems to intimidate some boys. Hearing this, I smiled wryly, feeling motivated to be more like her. I have to stay strong for Layla, but perhaps she's the one protecting me. Determined not to be called a hopeless person by Layla, I looked up at the blue sky, ready for another day at work.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.